Wealthy student plagiarizes poor classmate's essay. Scholarship committee's decision leaves entire school stunned. Hello? Welcome. Leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. Emma's heart raced as she stared at the email on her screen. Her hands trembled as she clicked to open it, knowing that her entire future depended on this moment. The scholarship committee's decision was finally here. For Emma, it wasn't just about winning a scholarship. It was about escaping a life of struggle, a chance to honor her late mother's dreams. But the words that appeared before her eyes sent a chill down her spine. Your submission has been disqualified for plagiarism. How could this be possible? Her work was everything, her only way out. Across town, Jake, the golden boy of the school, was celebrating. The same essay, Emma's essay, had earned him the scholarship. The one she had worked on for weeks, pouring her soul into every word. But now, it was his victory, his moment of triumph. As Emma's world crumbles, questions fill the air. How far would someone go to steal another's future? And what secrets are lurking behind this betrayal that no one sees coming? The truth will shake everyone to the core. And for Emma, uncovering it will mean confronting a past she never knew existed. The piercing ring of Emma Carter's phone cut through the silence of her tiny, dimly lit bedroom. Her heart raced as she fumbled to answer it, her trembling fingers betraying the weight of her hopes and fears. This call could change everything. Hello, is this Emma Carter? The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and utterly devoid of warmth. Yes, this is she, Emma stammered, her free hand clutching the worn fabric of her second-hand jeans. This is Dr. Jameson from the Riverside Scholarship Committee. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken news. I regret to inform you that your application has been disqualified. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Emma's vision blurred, her ears ringing as if she'd been struck. Disqualified? She echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. But why? I'm afraid there's evidence of plagiarism in your essay submission. Dr. Jameson's tone was clipped, leaving no room for argument. This is a serious violation of our academic integrity policy. I'm sorry, but the committee's decision is final. The call ended, leaving Emma in a deafening silence. She stared at her phone, willing it to ring again, for someone to say it was all a mistake. But the screen remained dark, a mirror to the future that had just slipped through her fingers. With shaking hands, Emma opened her laptop, the ancient machine wheezing to life. She navigated to her essay, the words she had poured her heart and soul into for weeks. As she scrolled through the familiar paragraphs, a sob caught in her throat. This was her work, her dreams, her one shot at a better life. How could they accuse her of cheating? A notification popped up on her screen, a campus-wide email announcing the scholarship winners. Emma's finger hovered over the delete button, but morbid curiosity won out. She opened it, her eyes scanning the list until they landed on a name that made her blood run cold. Jake Thornton, the golden boy, the charming, effortlessly popular kid whose family's name graced half the buildings on campus. Emma's mind reeled, recalling how Jake had asked to read her essay draft weeks ago, praising her work with a megawatt smile that had made her cheeks flush. No, Emma whispered, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. He couldn't, but the evidence was there, stark and damning. Jake had taken her words, her story, and claimed them as his own. And now he was being rewarded for it, while Emma's dreams crumbled to dust. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she glanced at the framed photo on her nightstand. Her mother's warm smile beamed back at her, frozen in time before cancer had stolen her away. I'm sorry, Mom, Emma choked out. I tried so hard. I thought this was our chance. The weight of it all crashed down on Emma. Years of part-time jobs, nights spent studying instead of socializing, the constant struggle to keep her head above water in a sea of privilege. All of it, for nothing. The injustice of it burned in her chest, a white-hot ember of rage and despair. Emma's gaze drifted to the window where she could just make out the sprawling Thornton estate on the hill overlooking the town. Jake was probably there now, celebrating his ill-gotten victory with his perfect family in their perfect world. The contrast to her own reality, a drafty apartment in the rundown part of town, shelves lined with second-hand textbooks, and a future that now seemed bleaker than ever, was almost too much to bear. She thought of all the times she'd defended Jake to her friends, insisting he wasn't just another entitled rich kid. How he'd made her feel seen, special even, when he'd asked to read her essay. The memory of his handsome face, alight with false admiration, now made her stomach churn. Emma's phone buzzed again, a flurry of congratulatory texts from friends who hadn't yet heard the news. Each cheerful message was like a knife twisting in her gut. How could she face them now? How could she walk into school tomorrow, knowing that everyone would soon learn of her supposed cheating? The walls of her tiny room seemed to close in, suffocating her with the weight of shattered dreams and uncertain futures. Emma curled up on her bed, clutching her mother's photo to her chest as sobs racked her body. In that moment, she felt more alone than she ever had before. As the last light of day faded outside her window, Emma's tears finally began to subside. In their place, a steely resolve began to take root. She may have lost this battle, but she refused to let Jake Thornton steal her future along with her words. Tomorrow she would face the whispers and the stares. She would hold her head high, knowing the truth even if no one else did. And somehow, some way, she would find a path forward. Not just for herself, but for the memory of her mother and every other kid who had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition. Emma Carter may have been knocked down, but she was far from out. The game had changed, but the war was just beginning. The morning after the devastating phone call, Emma forced herself out of bed, her body heavy with exhaustion and despair. The bustling hallways of Riverside High felt like a gauntlet as she made her way to her locker, acutely aware of the whispers and sidelong glances from her classmates. News traveled fast in a small town like theirs. Emma kept her head down, focusing on the scuffed linoleum floor beneath her feet. She couldn't bear to meet anyone's eyes, afraid of what she might see there. Pity, judgment, or worst of all, belief in her supposed guilt. As she fumbled with her locker combination, a familiar voice cut through the background chatter. "Em, there you are." It was Zoe, her best friend since elementary school. "I've been texting you all morning. What happened with the scholarship? Why aren't you—" Zoe's voice trailed off as she took in Emma's red-rimmed eyes and slumped shoulders. "Oh no, Emma, what's wrong?" Emma's throat tightened. She shook her head slightly, unable to form the words. Zoe's brow furrowed with concern, and she gently steered Emma toward an empty classroom nearby. Once inside, Emma's composure crumbled. Between sobs, she poured out the whole sordid tale, the disqualification, the accusation of plagiarism, and Jake's betrayal. Zoe listened in stunned silence, her expression morphing from shock to outrage. "That low-life snake," she hissed. "We have to tell someone. Principal Goodwin, or—" "No." Emma's voice was hoarse but firm. "It's his word against mine. Who do you think they'll believe? The scholarship committee already made their decision." Zoe opened her mouth to argue, but the defeated look in Emma's eyes made her pause. Instead, she pulled her friend into a fierce hug. "This isn't over," she murmured. "We'll figure something out." As the day wore on, Emma felt like she was moving through a fog. She went through the motions of her classes, barely registering the lessons. During lunch, she retreated to the library, unable to face the crowded cafeteria. It was there, hidden among the stacks, that a memory surfaced, sharp and vivid against the dullness of her current reality. Emma was 5 years old, curled up in her mother's lap as they looked through an old photo album. Her mother's gentle voice filled the air, weaving tales of family history and long-lost connections. There was one photo that always made her pause, a faded image of two women arms linked standing in front of a grand old house. "That's me and my best friend Sarah," her mother had explained, a wistful smile on her face. "We were inseparable back then. Life took us in different directions, but I'll always cherish those memories." Now, over a decade later, Emma's mind raced. The house in that photo, she'd seen it before. It was the Thornton estate, the very same one that loomed over their town. Could it be possible? Was there some connection between her family and Jake's that she'd never known about? Driven by a desperate need for answers, Emma rushed home after school. She headed straight for the dusty attic, where boxes of her mother's belongings had been stored after her passing. Time seemed to stand still as Emma rifled through old papers and mementos, searching for that elusive photo album. Just as she was about to give up, her hand brushed against a small, leather-bound book. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she realized what it was. Her mother's diary. With trembling fingers, she opened it, and a folded piece of paper fluttered to the floor. Emma picked it up, unfolding it carefully. It was a letter addressed to Robert Thornton, Jake's father. Emma's eyes widened as she began to read, her mother's familiar handwriting blurring through her tears. The letter spoke of a long-standing friendship, of support given in times of need, and of a debt that could never be fully repaid. It hinted at a connection between their families that ran far deeper than Emma could have imagined. As the sun began to set outside, casting long shadows across the attic floor, Emma sat amidst the scattered remnants of her family's past. Her mind reeled with questions. Why had her mother never told her about this? What did it mean for her current situation with Jake? The ground beneath her feet, once so solid and certain, now felt shifting and treacherous. Emma realized that there was far more to this story than a simple case of academic dishonesty. The truth, whatever it might be, was buried in years of secrets and unspoken history. As she clutched the letter to her chest, Emma felt a mix of emotions swirling within her: confusion, anger, and a glimmer of something else. Hope, perhaps, or determination. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't rest until she uncovered the full truth, no matter where it might lead her. The mystery of her past and the injustice of her present collided, setting Emma on a path that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself, her family, and the town she called home. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would test her resilience, her loyalty, and her very understanding of right and wrong. The following day dawned crisp and clear, a mockery of the turmoil roiling inside Emma. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with the implications of her discovery. As she walked through the school gates, a flyer caught her eye, an announcement for an assembly to honor the scholarship recipients. Emma's stomach clenched at the sight of Jake's name prominently displayed. Throughout her morning classes, Emma couldn't focus. The letter from her mother to Jake's father burned in her mind, raising more questions than answers. By lunchtime, she'd made a decision. She had to confront Jake, to understand why he'd done what he did, and to see if he knew anything about their family's shared history. Emma spotted Jake in the cafeteria, surrounded by his usual crowd of admirers. He was holding court, basking in the glow of his recent achievement. The sight of his easy smile made Emma's blood boil, but she forced herself to remain calm. She approached the table, her heart pounding. "Jake, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Alone?" Jake looked up, surprise flickering across his handsome features. For a moment, Emma thought she saw a flash of guilt in his eyes, but it was gone so quickly she couldn't be sure. Sure, Emma," he said, standing up. "Let's go outside." They walked in tense silence to a quiet corner of the school courtyard. Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I know what you did, Jake," she said, her voice low but intense. "You stole my essay. You took my words, my story, and passed it off as your own." Jake's face paled, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he said something that caught Emma completely off guard. "You don't understand, Emma. It's complicated." Emma blinked, momentarily thrown. "Complicated? What's complicated about plagiarism, Jake? About stealing someone's future?" Jake ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture of frustration that seemed oddly genuine. "Look, I know how it seems, but there's more to this than you know. I had my reasons." "Oh, really?" Emma's voice dripped with sarcasm. "And what reasons could possibly justify what you did?" Jake opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again, conflict clear on his face. Finally, he said, "I can't explain everything right now, but believe me, this isn't just about a scholarship or an essay. There's history here, Emma. History you don't know about." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Could he be referring to the connection she'd just discovered? What do you mean, history? She pressed. Jake shook his head. I've already said too much, just trust me when I say this goes beyond you and me. I never wanted to hurt you, Emma. You have to believe that. Emma stared at him, a whirlwind of emotions battling inside her. Part of her wanted to scream at him to demand answers and justice, but another part, the part that remembered the warmth in her mother's voice when she spoke of Sarah Thornton, held her back. I don't know what to believe anymore, Jake, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But I do know this, what you did was wrong, and I won't let it stand. As she turned to walk away, Jake called after her. Emma, wait. There's something else you should know. But Emma didn't stop. She couldn't bear to hear any more half-truths or excuses. As she hurried back into the school building, her mind was racing. Jake's cryptic words had only deepened the mystery surrounding their family's connection. What did he know? And why did he seem so conflicted about it? For the rest of the day, Emma felt like she was walking through a fog. She replayed her conversation with Jake over and over, trying to make sense of it. By the time the final bell rang, she had made up her mind. She needed to dig deeper into her family's past, to uncover the truth that both Jake and her mother had kept hidden. That evening, Emma sat at her small desk, surrounded by old photos and letters she'd unearthed from the attic. As she pored over them, a picture began to emerge. One of two families, the Carters and the Thorntons, whose lives had been intertwined for generations. But there were still so many gaps, so many unanswered questions. Emma's gaze fell on a photo of her mother smiling and carefree in her youth. What were you hiding, Mom? She whispered. And why? As the night wore on, Emma felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Should she continue to pursue the truth, even if it meant potentially uncovering painful secrets? Or should she focus on clearing her name and exposing Jake's deception? The scholarship assembly was scheduled for the end of the week. Emma knew she had to make a decision before then, but with each new piece of information she uncovered, the path forward became less clear. Emma closed her eyes, feeling torn between her desire for justice and the nagging sense that there was more to this story than she knew. Whatever choice she made, she realized, would have consequences that reached far beyond a single scholarship or essay. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Emma's dreams were filled with shadowy figures and half-heard whispers, echoes of a past that refused to stay buried. Little did she know, the choices she would make in the coming days would not only shape her future, but would unravel a web of secrets that had bound two families together for decades. The next morning, Emma woke with a sense of determination. She had spent half the night tossing and turning, her mind racing with questions about her family's past and Jake's cryptic words. As she got ready for school, she made a decision. She would dive deeper into her mother's belongings, searching for any clue that might shed light on this mystery. After a day of distracted classes and avoiding Jake's attempts to catch her eye, Emma rushed home. She headed straight for the attic, driven by a mix of curiosity and desperation. The musty space was filled with boxes and old furniture, each item a potential key to unlocking the secrets of her past. For hours, Emma sifted through faded photographs, dusty albums, and crumbling paperwork. Her eyes strained in the dim light as she scanned each document, looking for anything that might connect her family to the Thorntons. Just as her frustration was about to peak, her hand brushed against a small, ornate wooden box tucked away in the corner of an old trunk. With trembling fingers, Emma opened the box. Inside, she found a stack of letters neatly tied with a faded ribbon. Her breath caught as she recognized her mother's handwriting on the envelopes. Each one was addressed to Robert Thornton, Jake's father. Emma's heart pounded as she carefully untied the ribbon and selected the letter on top of the stack. It was dated just a few months before her mother's passing. As she began to read, the world around her seemed to fade away, replaced by the echo of her mother's voice in her mind. Dear Robert, I hope this letter finds you well. As my time grows short, I find myself reflecting on the many twists and turns our lives have taken. The burden of our shared secret weighs heavily on me, especially now as I think of Emma's future. Your continued support over the years has been a lifeline for us, allowing Emma opportunities she might never have had otherwise. I know it couldn't have been easy, keeping this from your own family. The risk you've taken, the sacrifices you've made, I can never fully express my gratitude. But Robert, I worry about what will happen when I'm gone. Emma knows nothing of our past, of the debt our family owes to yours. I've tried so many times to tell her, but the words always fail me. How do I explain the choices we made all those years ago? How do I prepare her for the truth? I know I have no right to ask more of you, but I beg you, please watch over Emma when I'm gone. Guide her, protect her, but let her forge her own path. She has so much potential, so much fire in her spirit. I fear that knowing the full truth too soon might extinguish that flame. Perhaps one day when she's ready, the whole story can come to light. Until then, I entrust her future to your care, as I have for so long. With eternal gratitude and friendship, Margaret. Emma's hands shook as she finished reading, tears blurring her vision. The letter slipped from her grasp, falling to the floor, as the magnitude of what she'd just learned crashed over her. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, each one a revelation that shook the foundation of everything she thought she knew. The Thornton family, Jake's family, had been supporting them financially for years, in secret, without Emma ever knowing. The scholarship, the opportunities she'd had, perhaps even their modest but stable life after her father's death. It had all been made possible by the very family she now felt betrayed by. A maelstrom of emotions swirled within Emma. Confusion, anger, gratitude, and a deep, aching sense of loss for the mother she realized she'd never fully known. Questions raced through her mind. What was the shared secret her mother mentioned? What debt did the Carters owe the Thorntons? And how did all of this connect to Jake's actions with the essay? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the attic, Emma sat amidst the scattered remnants of her family's hidden past. She was faced with a heart-wrenching dilemma. Should she expose Jake's plagiarism, potentially ruining the reputation of the family that had secretly supported her for years? Or should she sacrifice her own sense of justice, her own future, out of gratitude for their hidden generosity? The weight of this choice pressed down on Emma, making it hard to breathe. She thought of her mother's words, "Let her forge her own path," and wondered what path she could possibly take now, with the ground shifting beneath her feet. As night fell, Emma carefully gathered the letters and made her way back to her room. She knew sleep would be impossible. Tomorrow, she would have to face Jake again, armed with this new knowledge. But how could she confront him without revealing that she knew about their family's secret connection? Emma's world had been turned upside down, leaving her grappling with questions of loyalty, gratitude, and the true meaning of justice. As she stared out her window at the distant lights of the Thornton estate, she realized that the path forward was far more complex and treacherous than she could have ever imagined. The truth she had uncovered was both a gift and a burden, one that would force her to make the most difficult decision of her young life. And whatever choice she made, Emma knew, would have consequences that would ripple far beyond the walls of Riverside High. The next morning, Emma dragged herself out of bed, feeling as if she'd barely slept. The weight of her discovery pressed down on her, making even the simplest tasks feel monumental. As she got ready for school, her eyes kept drifting to the stack of letters on her desk, each one a link in the chain of secrets that now bound her. The halls of Riverside High buzzed with the usual morning chatter, but to Emma it all sounded muffled and distant. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, her mind miles away. At her locker, Zoe appeared, her face etched with concern. "Em, you look like you've seen a ghost," Zoe said, lowering her voice. "Did something else happen?" Emma opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. How could she possibly explain? The urge to confide in her best friend warred with the need to protect the secret she'd uncovered. I can't talk about it right now," she finally managed. "It's complicated." Zoe's brow furrowed, but she nodded slowly. "Okay, but remember, I'm here if you need me, always." As Emma made her way to her first class, she caught sight of Jake down the hall. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Emma was struck by the complexity of emotions she saw there. Guilt, confusion, and something that looked almost like pleading. She quickly looked away, her heart pounding. Throughout the day, Emma felt like she was walking a tightrope. Every interaction, every glance from a classmate or teacher, seemed loaded with potential danger. Did they suspect something? Did they know? The paranoia was exhausting. In English class, their teacher, Mrs. Donovan, announced a group project. And to mix things up, she said with a smile that Emma found unbearable, "I'll be assigning the pairs." Emma's stomach dropped as Mrs. Donovan read through the list. Emma Carter and Jake Thornton. The room seemed to spin. Emma could feel Jake's eyes on her, but she couldn't bring herself to look at him. As the class broke into their assigned pairs, Emma remained frozen in her seat. Jake approached hesitantly. "Emma, can we talk, please?" She finally forced herself to meet his gaze. "About the project or about how you stole my future?" Jake flinched at her words. "Both." "Neither." "I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration that reminded Emma painfully of his father in the old photos. "There's so much you don't understand." "Then help me understand," Emma hissed, her voice low to avoid attracting attention. "Why did you do it, Jake? Was it just because you could? Because you thought I wouldn't fight back?" Jake's eyes widened. "No, God, no, Emma, it's not like that at all. I was trying to help." Emma scoffed. "Help? By stealing my work? By ruining my chances?" "By making sure you got the support you needed," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The scholarship. It was never about the money for me. But for you." Emma felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. Did Jake know about his family's support? How much did he really understand about their shared history? Before she could respond, Mrs. Donovan called the class back to order. Emma and Jake spent the rest of the period in tense silence, ostensibly working on their project, but both lost in their own tumultuous thoughts. As the final bell rang, Emma rushed out of the classroom, desperate for some air. She found herself in the school's small courtyard, sinking onto a bench as the emotions of the day threatened to overwhelm her. She thought about her mother's letters, about the years of secret support from the Thorntons. She thought about Jake's words, his insistence that he was trying to help. The lines between right and wrong, between gratitude and justice, seemed to blur with each passing moment. As Emma sat there grappling with her internal conflict, she noticed a small group of students huddled nearby, whispering excitedly. She caught fragments of their conversation. Scholarship committee, and anonymous tip, and investigation. Her blood ran cold. Had someone reported Jake's plagiarism? Was the truth about to come out regardless of what she decided? Emma realized that time was running out. The choice she had been agonizing over might soon be taken out of her hands. She needed to decide, and fast, confront Jake with the full truth of what she knew, go to the scholarship committee herself, or continue to guard the secrets that now felt like invisible chains around her heart. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Emma stood up. Her path forward was still unclear, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't keep carrying this burden alone. It was time to face Jake, to demand the full truth, no matter the cost. With a deep breath, Emma pulled out her phone and typed a message to Jake. "Meet me at the old oak tree behind the school. 7 p.m. We need to talk about everything." As she hit send, Emma felt a mix of terror and relief. Whatever happened next would change everything. Her future, her understanding of her past, and the delicate web of secrets that connected two families across generations. The stage was set for a confrontation that would force both Emma and Jake to confront hard truths and make impossible choices. As Emma left the courtyard, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking towards a moment that would define the rest of her life. The old oak tree stood as a silent sentinel, its gnarled branches reaching into the darkening sky. Emma arrived early, her nerves on edge as she paced beneath the tree's sprawling canopy. The weight of her mother's letters seemed to burn in her backpack, a physical reminder of the secret she carried. At precisely 7 p.m., Jake appeared, his usual confidence replaced by an uncharacteristic hesitancy. He approached slowly, as if giving Emma the chance to change her mind and flee. "You came," Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. Jake nodded, his eyes searching her face. "Of course, Emma, No," she cut him off. "Before you say anything else, I need you to listen." Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I know, Jake, about your family supporting mine. About the connection between our parents. I found my mom's letters. Jake's eyes widened, a mix of shock and something like relief washing over his features. You know? God, Emma, I've wanted to tell you for so long, but I didn't know how. I didn't think you'd believe me. Believe you? Emma's voice rose, emotions she'd been suppressing bubbling to the surface. You stole my essay, Jake. You took my words, my story, and used them to win a scholarship you don't even need. How am I supposed to believe anything you say? Jake flinched at her words but didn't back down. I know how it looks, but Emma, you have to understand, I never meant to hurt you. I was trying to protect you, to make sure you got the support you deserved. Protect me? Emma scoffed. By ruining my chances, by making everyone think I'm a cheater? No. Jake ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. The scholarship, it was never about the money for me. But for you, it meant everything. I thought if I won, I could decline it. Make sure it went to the runner-up. To you. Emma stared at him, incredulous. That's not how it works, Jake, and even if it did, why go through all this? Why not just tell me the truth? Jake's shoulders slumped. Because I was a coward, he admitted quietly. I've known about our family's connection for years. My dad, he made me promise to look out for you, to make sure you had every opportunity. But he also swore me to secrecy. Said it wasn't my story to tell. As Jake spoke, the pieces began to fall into place for Emma. The mysterious smiles, the coincidental help that always seemed to appear when she needed it most. So all this time you've been, what? My secret guardian angel? Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. Hardly. I'm just a guy who made a promise he didn't fully understand, and then I screwed it all up trying to keep it. Emma felt her anger begin to give way to a confusing mix of emotions. Gratitude, resentment, and a deep, aching sadness for the years of honesty they'd both lost. Jake, I appreciate what you and your family have done for me. Really, I do. But this isn't right. You can't make decisions about my life without me. I know, Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. I see that now, I didn't know how to tell you. How do you explain years of secrets and half-truths? You start by being honest, Emma said firmly. No more secrets, Jake. I need to know everything. Why did our families make this arrangement? What debt was my mom talking about in her letters? Jake took a deep breath, visibly steeling himself. It goes back to our grandparents' generation, he began. Your grandfather saved my grandfather's life during the war. They made a pact that their families would always look out for each other. When your dad died and then your mom got sick, my parents felt like it was their duty to help. But your mom, she was proud. She didn't want charity, so they found ways to help without making it obvious. Emma listened, her mind reeling with each new revelation. And the essay? The plagiarism? Jake's face crumpled with shame. That was all me. I don't know what I thought. That I could somehow balance the scales, make sure you got the recognition you deserved. But I went about it all wrong. I betrayed your trust, and I'll never forgive myself for that. As Jake's words hung in the air between them, Emma felt the weight of generations of secrets and obligations pressing down on her. She thought of her mother's sacrifices, of the Thorntons' silent support, of Jake's misguided attempts to help. The lines between right and wrong, gratitude and independence seemed to blur with each passing moment. What do we do now? Emma asked, her voice small against the vastness of the situation they found themselves in. Jake met her gaze, his eyes filled with a determination she'd never seen before. We tell the truth, he said firmly. All of it. To the scholarship committee, to our families, to everyone. No more secrets, no more hidden debts. We face the consequences together. Emma felt a flutter of fear at the thought of exposing everything, but also a glimmer of hope. Together, she echoed. Jake nodded, reaching out to take her hand. Together. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, Emma, but I promise you, from this moment on, nothing but the truth between us. As they stood there, beneath the old oak tree that had witnessed generations of secrets, Emma felt something shift. The invisible chains that had bound her began to loosen, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of understanding. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with potential consequences and difficult conversations. But as Emma looked at Jake, she saw not the entitled rich kid she'd once assumed him to be, but a flawed, complex person trying to navigate a legacy neither of them had asked for. "Okay," Emma said finally, squeezing Jake's hand. "The truth, all of it. Whatever happens next, we face it honestly." As they walked away from the oak tree towards an uncertain future, Emma felt a mixture of trepidation and relief. The price of truth would be high, but the cost of secrets, she now understood, was even higher. The final chapter of their shared story was yet to be written, but for the first time Emma felt like she had a say in how it would unfold. Whatever came next, she would face it with open eyes and an honest heart. The following days passed in a blur for Emma. After her confrontation with Jake, they had agreed to take a day to process everything before deciding on their next steps. Now, as she sat on her bed, surrounded by her mother's letters and old family photos, Emma felt the full weight of her decision pressing down on her. She thought back to all the times she'd struggled, wondering how they'd managed to keep afloat after her father's death and her mother's illness. The mysterious scholarships, the anonymous donations to her mother's medical fund, the job opportunities that seemed to appear just when they needed them most. It all made sense now. Emma's eyes fell on a photo of her mother, smiling bravely despite the visible signs of her illness. "What would you want me to do, Mom?" she whispered, tracing her mother's face with her finger. As if in answer, Emma's gaze was drawn to one of her mother's letters. She picked it up, rereading a passage that had stuck with her. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to guide you. But remember, your path is your own to choose. The debts of the past don't define your future. Always do what you believe is right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she realized what she had to do. It wouldn't be easy, but she knew it was the right thing. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone and typed out a message to Jake. "I've made my decision. Meet me at school early tomorrow. We'll face this together." The next morning, Emma arrived at Riverside High before most of the other students. Jake was already there, pacing nervously in front of the main entrance. When he saw her, relief washed over his face. "Emma, he began, but she held up a hand to stop him. "Before we do this, I need you to know something," Emma said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I've thought a lot about everything, the scholarship, our family's history, all of it. And I've decided, I forgive you, Jake." Jake's eyes widened in surprise. You do? But after everything I did?" Emma nodded. "What you did was wrong, but I understand why you did it. We've both been carrying the weight of our family's past, trying to live up to expectations we never asked for. It's time to break that cycle." Relief and gratitude flooded Jake's face. "Thank you, Emma. I promise I'll spend every day trying to make this right." "We both will," Emma said firmly, "starting now." Together, they walked into the school and headed straight for Principal Goodwin's office. As they waited to be called in, Emma felt a strange calm settle over her. Whatever happened next, she knew she was doing the right thing. Principal Goodwin listened in stunned silence as Emma and Jake took turns explaining everything: the plagiarism, the family history, the years of secret support. When they finished, the principal sat back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "I must say this is unprecedented," she finally said. "I appreciate your honesty, but you understand there must be consequences for academic dishonesty." "We understand," Emma said, her voice steady. "We're prepared to face whatever consequences you deem appropriate." Jake nodded in agreement. "We just want the truth to be known." Principal Goodwin studied them both for a long moment. "Very well. I'll need to consult with the scholarship committee and the board. For now, you're both suspended pending a full investigation. I suggest you use this time to reflect on your actions and prepare for a hearing next week." As they left the office, Emma felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. "What now?" Jake asked as they stepped out into the morning sunshine. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the warmth on her face. Now we tell our families all of it, no more secrets. Jake nodded, a mix of fear and determination in his eyes. Together? Together, Emma confirmed. As they walked away from the school towards an uncertain future, Emma thought about her mother's words. She was forging her own path now, one built on honesty and the courage to face difficult truths. The scholarship, her future at Riverside, Jake's reputation, all of it hung in the balance. But as Emma looked at Jake, seeing not the entitled rich kid she once thought he was, but a flawed, complex person trying to do better, she knew they'd face whatever came next side by side. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows behind them as they walked. Emma couldn't help but feel that these shadows represented the past they were leaving behind, a past of secrets, misunderstandings, and unspoken debts. Ahead of them lay a future that, while uncertain, held the promise of something new, a chance at genuine understanding, forgiveness, and redemption. As they reached the crossroads where they would part ways to face their respective families, Emma and Jake paused. Without a word, they hugged, a gesture that conveyed more than words ever could. Shared pain, mutual understanding, and a commitment to moving forward with honesty and integrity. Pulling apart, Emma gave Jake a small, determined smile. "See you on the other side," she said. Jake nodded, his eyes reflecting a mix of fear and hope. "Good luck, Emma, and thank you for everything." As Emma walked home, her mind raced with thoughts of the conversation ahead. She knew it wouldn't be easy, explaining everything to her aunt who had been her guardian since her mother's passing. But she also felt a sense of lightness, of rightness in her decision. Whatever consequences lay ahead, whatever challenges they would face, Emma knew one thing for certain. She was no longer bound by the invisible chains of the past. She was free to forge her own path, guided by the strength and wisdom her mother had instilled in her. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Emma felt ready to face it. With honesty, courage, and the hard-won knowledge that redemption often comes at a price, but it's a price worth paying. The gymnasium of Riverside High buzzed with anticipation. Students, teachers, and parents filled the bleachers, their excited chatter echoing off the walls. At the front, a makeshift stage had been set up, adorned with the school's colors and a large banner announcing the scholarship award ceremony. Emma sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The past week had been a whirlwind of emotions and difficult conversations. After confessing everything to Principal Goodwin, she and Jake had faced their families with the truth. The reactions had ranged from shock and disappointment to, surprisingly, relief that the long-held secrets were finally out in the open. The scholarship committee had conducted a thorough investigation, interviewing Emma, Jake, and their families. The suspension had been hard, but it had also given Emma time to reflect on everything that had happened. Now, as she waited for the ceremony to begin, Emma felt a strange mix of nerves and calm. Whatever happened today, she knew she had done the right thing. Principal Goodwin stepped up to the podium, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Good morning, everyone. Before we begin the awards, we have a special presentation. Emma Carter has requested to address the school." A hush fell over the crowd as Emma stood and made her way to the stage. She could feel all eyes on her, could hear the whispers starting to circulate. Taking a deep breath, she stepped up to the microphone. "Hello, everyone," she began, her voice wavering slightly before steadying. "I know many of you have heard rumors about what happened with the scholarship competition. Today, I want to tell you the truth, all of it." For the next 10 minutes, Emma spoke from her heart. She told the story of two families bound by a generations-old promise, of secret support and misguided attempts to help. She spoke of Jake's plagiarism and her own discovery of the truth. She didn't shy away from the hard parts, the anger, the betrayal, the difficult decisions. "I stand before you today not to make excuses but to take responsibility," Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. "What happened was wrong, on many levels. But I've learned that the world isn't always black and white. Sometimes good people make bad choices for what they think are the right reasons." She paused, looking out over the silent crowd. "I've also learned the power of forgiveness. Not just forgiving others, but forgiving ourselves for our mistakes. It's not easy, but it's necessary if we want to move forward. Emma's eyes found Jake in the crowd. He gave her a small, encouraging nod. So today, I'm not here to ask for your sympathy or understanding. I'm here to tell you that we all have the power to choose how we respond to life's challenges. We can let our past define us, or we can learn from it and use it to become better. As Emma spoke, she could see the impact of her words rippling through the audience. Tears glistened in some eyes, while others nodded in understanding. In the spirit of honesty and moving forward, I've decided to decline any consideration for the scholarship, Emma announced, a collective gasp rising from the crowd. Instead, I ask that it be awarded to someone who truly needs it, someone who might not otherwise have the chance to pursue their dreams. She took a deep breath, preparing for her final words. Thank you all for listening. I hope my story can serve as a reminder that it's never too late to choose honesty, to make amends, and to forge a new path. As Emma stepped away from the microphone, the gymnasium erupted in applause. It started slowly, then built to a thunderous roar. Emma felt overwhelmed by the response, tears pricking at her eyes. Principal Goodwin returned to the podium, visibly moved. Thank you, Emma, for your bravery and honesty. In light of recent events, the scholarship committee has made some changes to this year's awards. The principal went on to announce that the scholarship would be divided among several deserving students who had demonstrated both academic excellence and financial need. Jake, she revealed, had voluntarily withdrawn his application and had worked with his family to establish a new fund to support students facing hardships. As the ceremony concluded, Emma found herself surrounded by classmates, teachers, and even strangers, all wanting to express their support and admiration. It was overwhelming, but also deeply touching. In the midst of the crowd, Jake made his way to her side. That was incredible, Emma, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know if I could have done what you did. Emma gave him a small smile. We did it together, remember? This is just the beginning. As they stood there, surrounded by the buzzing energy of the gym, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still consequences to face, trust to rebuild, and a future to figure out. But for the first time in a long while, she felt truly free. The weight of secrets and unspoken obligations had been lifted, replaced by the liberating power of truth and forgiveness. Emma knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with honesty, integrity, and the knowledge that redemption was always possible. As she looked around at the faces of her classmates, teachers, and community members, Emma realized that her story had touched something in all of them. Perhaps, in sharing her journey, she had opened the door for others to confront their own truths and seek their own paths to forgiveness and redemption. The scholarship might have been lost, but Emma had gained something far more valuable: the freedom to write her own story, unburdened by the shadows of the past. And as she walked out of the gymnasium that day, hand in hand with Jake, she knew that the most important chapters of that story were yet to be written.
Thank you very much for listening to this story. Comment below what you thought of the ending and from which city you're listening to us. If you enjoyed the story and want to hear more, click on the next story that's appearing on your screen now. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories together. See you soon.